everybody, welcome back. This is going to be the Stag energy, the shadow work energy, the Cernunnos energy, the energies upon energies of energies video. It's hot, I'm losing my mind. I'm still going to be sipping water if you already watched the Ellen video first, which you may have done, and if you did, then you'll know that I have run out of water and now I need lemonade. Okay, fine. That's the way of the universe. I drank all my water like a good girl and now I get my dessert. Lemonade. I'm just going to leave this in because I don't believe in editing. You're welcome, everybody. Hi, welcome back. So the whole thing went in the background like you're so unprofessional. Oh my god, I'm just going to ruin the background, Joey. So we're talking about Stag energy, and as before, we're just going to read a little bit. This one is from the spiritual center of the traditional meaning of stag. The elusive and rarely seen white stag will bring dignity to fair Verona, where we lay our scene. Independence and fertility to new projects or new beginnings. It is known that he stands in the shadow of the birch tree in the language of the Druids. Ogham tree lore calls Bieth birch, and stands at the edge of the forest, a gateway to spiritual enlightenment. To call upon the Stag is to call on his divine power to enhance a new beginning or new venture, to bring dignity. We need that. Seriously, you have no dignity. Power, well, I do, but you're just crazy. Power and integrity, and to fertilize those new ideas. With the Stag as your totem, it's time to stand tall, be seen, and now is the time to attract all the things you desire. It is time for you and your thoughts to manifest reality. Feeling positive, assertive, and diplomatic will help your dreams materialize. Stag is an earth tide energy and brings harmony and a natural sense of progression, encouraging stability, patience, to be able to wait and be comfortable waiting. Is not one of my strong points. He is a solitaire for most of the year, but when his antlers come, so does his need to share, and he will make himself known to all that seek his influence and will willingly give it to those who are prepared to accept his ways. The Stag has always occupied Celtic lands and is the source of much myth and legend. It takes a skilled hunter to find an older stag, and with age comes wisdom. With responsibility comes a stronger will to survive. An older stag will attract an impressive harem, and will skillfully accept responsibilities and his share of stature. The amount of points on his antlers suggests the size of orb he can carry, and his orb is the world. The unseen orb is possibly the revered disc that is surrounded in mystery and held in such a high regard by our druidic ancestors. Before the winter solstice, he will once again seek solitude into his life of reverence that will only be known to those that understand his ways. The power of the Stag is never lost on any that see him. In the coming of Samhain, the veil between the worlds is at its thinnest. The Stag is in his prime. 40,000 years ago, the cave walls were adorned with pictures of the red stag, such as in recognition as free will and majestic spirit. The root chakra is the color of that red found in autumn. The color is found at the base of a flame. The sacral chakra is the orange that is found in the setting sun, the leaf ready to fall. The stag standing mighty and proud will not be seen in this environment. The perfect camouflage as he stands, affording you strength and ability, hope and purpose. The orange from his coat and antlers fertilize your dreams, hopes, desires, and growth. The stag wants you to be the best you can be, with feet firmly on the ground beside you. He is the inspirer, allowing you to see natural beauty without and within. Yeah, it goes on a little bit, but I think that covers the essence of what we want from this particular thing. Excuse me for having a drinkies. It's too warm, as I will be saying every video made today and probably for the next week. So when we're looking at the energies of Cernunnos, and then we talked in the other video about how he is the hunter and the hunted, he is the energy of will, the desire to manifest, and as we have just mentioned here, he's associated with the root chakra and how we root down into the spiritual ecosystem as well as into ourselves. He has energies that I think are really important when looking at shadow work to do with independence, fertility, earthing, and the natural progression of self. In the podcast discussing his energies, there is definitely an undertone of the life force energy, the sexual energy, and how it has become so maligned within our society, how it has become simply associated with a sexual act and not to do with many different ways in which this life force energy can manifest within us, because it's become perverted, because it's become something dirty and behind closed doors. Through hundreds of years of conditioning, mostly at the hands of patriarchal religions and the church. And at least in the Celtic countries, the major Celtic countries, that's Christianity. Not entirely across the world, but it is in the major Celtic places that came in and conquered those areas of the world and disseminated the religion. So for Cernunnos, when we're looking at shadows of self and the stag medicine, it's very much those things that are tied into the root chakra and spiral at the base of our being. The root chakra, or the third cauldron, or however you choose to see that area around the place of sexuality that grounds that energy down into the earth, is responsible for so much of our connection to the earth, the world, the spiritual ecosystem, our physical selves, how we see our physical and sexual selves, and any of the energies that can be blocked in those places is to do with the blocking of our inner wildness. Wildness is often something that we consider to be shameful in the modern time, or we are taught is shameful, that the energy in animals of beasts is lesser than that of the rational mind, and that the act of sexuality is actually somehow base or disconnected from a higher spiritual power, or offensive to a higher spiritual power, or offensive to our own intelligence, rationality. And it's sort of taken as the idea that the beast with the two backs is in direct contrast, in direct fighting with the realm of the mind, that it dissuades and distracts, and it all ties into a ton of sexism, by the way, because this line of reasoning is used to be like, oh well, you know, all women are good for is that, and they'll distract you, and blah 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 blah, and all that nasty sexism around that, which I've heard plenty of times in my life, to be perfectly honest with you, from like parents of men and other people in the world. I've heard it plenty of times, and it's like that the sexual act somehow completely removes, it completely almost enchants and takes away the rational mind, and I think it is really interesting because on one level I think it kind of does, but on another level it's kind of, because we are so afraid of our wildness, of our animalistic physical selves, that we almost take sensuality, sexuality out of the equation in our culture. There are other cultures which have, you know, long rituals all associated with the sexual energy of the drawing of the, I mean, it feels like some Eastern traditions have a better handle on it than we do in the West, with their kind of tantric arts and things of that nature. Whereas for a lot of us, it's kind of like a joke. It's made fun of. It's kind of behind closed doors. It's a little shame. And it's a really strange thing that all this life force, all of this energy is tied behind this massive shadow of shame, of all kinds of shame and guilt, whether it be spiritual guilt, physical body guilt. There's so many different ones that tie into it. And these things aren't talked about openly, and they're not talked about, they're not expressed openly. And we do have a culture, as John Beckett had said, where we know that people come forward and they're like, well, so we think sexuality is sacred. Like, there's always pagans saying that. We know that by now. That's part of the common diatribe. And I'm like, okay, but it really does feel like the way that it comes through is like, because it's hotly contesting the idea that it's shameful, which has been like pushed on the human consciousness for generations. And the expression of why it is sacred and how it is sacred, and that it can be animalistic and sacred at the same time, is something which is perhaps not embodied, discussed as much. And Cernunnos is very much like the hunt of the wild beasts, the wild hunt within, you know, the very fey-like sense, but also within the animalistic sense. And he's all for shamanistically channeling animals up through the self, and bringing understanding of birds and beasts into the being. And for them, it's just a part of essence, it's a part of being, it's a necessary part for procreation, but there's also the dance of it, there's also the pleasure of it. And so he brings about the spiral dance of pleasure. I'm just going to make a note of that because I heard that from him. And what it means to be pleasure, to enjoy pleasure, to embody pleasure, and the things that you find pleasurable, both within the sexual act, but also within life, because this energy of life force and embodying Cernunnos, embodying and moving past the shadows of shame, is the spiral dances of pleasure and fertility. And this is not just in the physical, you know, sexual, fertile, having babies sense. As we talked about in the podcast, this life force is all the ways in which you are fertile ground, that you are the fertile forest within, and all the things you can birth into being, not just babies. You can birth in babies, it's fine, but go for it. But at the same time, it's not just these things, it's thoughts, it's ideas, it's words, it's deeds, it's creation, the creative projects of self, the ways that you birth things into being out into the world. They are all really important. And the thing that underpins all of that to Cernunnos is the spiral down into the root chakra of the pleasure of doing these things. Because if you're not feeling pleasure at creating, at the act of creation, then you're doing something wrong. You will probably feel blocked, stagnated, lethargic, apathetic, because what you are creating is not what brings you pleasure. It's not what you're passionate about. And that can be like the way that say you're painting. I'm using painting as an easy thing, and the way it makes your skin tingle, it makes you feel good. Or the way when I make certain scents for the store, like the smudge pots or the incenses and things like that, and I smell it and I'm like, oh my god, and then I'm like, oh yeah, I love it, I feel it, I'm like, oh, I'm good. And it's a little bit of self pride, not too much, just a little, and it's just that act of a little bit of self-love in there too, like, yeah, I feel that, I want that in the world, that's great. And it's passion, and it's pleasure, and it's life force, and it's creation, and it's fit, and out into the world. And it doesn't have to go out into the world. Sometimes these creations are just for you. But there should be a pride and an embellishment and a feel-good life force flowing from whatever it is that you've chosen to create in that moment. Drinkies. And so if we cannot get past the conditioning, if we cannot get past the strict censorship, if we cannot get past, and it's not even etiquette, like Cernunnos is not against good social etiquette. Like, He's a stag. He's regal. He's not like talking about the people who then pervert these things for abusing people. He's not into any of that. But he's very much like grounded in and of the earth. And he's like, you need to ground it out. Whatever it is that is causing that blockage in you, and wherever you feel it, you need to ground it out. You need to thump on the ground. You need to dance. You need to get into that spiral of pleasure. In the Dirt and Bone course, which some of you will have access to, there are rituals in there that talk about the idea of pleasure, of self-pleasuring, of seeing it as ritualistic. And he has that. And he goes in, and he's like he keeps showing me this visual where he gets his hand and he puts his hand in the dirt and he sinks his fingers in. And he's like, feel the earth. And then he like grabs and grinds at the earth in this very like dirty motion, like, and he's like, feel the earth against your skin. And then he's like, he holds it up and it's like falling through his fingers. And he's like, feel it falling from you. And then from his hand raises up a seed, and the seed is kind of glowing. And then he's like, hold the power of creation, place it into the earth and cover it and grow it like this motion, grow it with your energy and feel that plant growing with the power and the life force, and from it massive roots take shape, and it's the growing of your own tree. So this is a little spiritual exercise that you can practice about like channeling your life force and like the massive spirit trees that you can grow with your own life force. Excuse me, that both ground you and your spirit and your energy into the earth, and then grow and produce creative energy, guardians of this world, creating spirit guardians of this world through the power of your own life force, through the power of Cernunnos. And he's all about that creation. He's all about nature. He's all about shifting past the idea that you have to be small, that you have to be polite all the time, that you can't have a sensual, sexual self, and that energy is just for sex alone. It's not. You can be flirtatious, you can have fun, you can laugh, you can have really great friendships with a bit of banter in them. You can have creations of art and whatever art form that takes for you, that is displays of life force moving through you. And it ties back into Memento Vivere. Remember also to live, because we do not know how much time we have. So live fully as you can. And in these times where everything feels constrictive, we have to get inventive with how we channel that spiral energy. And there is no one correct way of doing that. You can still go into forests and things at the minute. So it is good for you to get into nature. But even if it's just looking at the places where you feel that you can't, or you're not good enough, and pushing past that energy on purpose, saying to yourself, whatever it is that I've decided that I can't do, that I live for, I'm going to do that. Okay, beautifuls, I hope you enjoyed this video. Many blessings, and talk to you soon.